Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I am so excited to have our special guest on today for our October masterclass is my good friend, Derek Woodruff. Thank you, Derek, for joining us today.
I'm so glad to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was going to go through and say all of your letters after your names, but you have quite a few of them.
It's so ridiculous.
I know, right? Let's see here. There's AAF, AIFD, CF, is it CFD, PFCI? Any others that we should have mentioned?
Yeah, I think there's a few unofficial ones in there too, probably that people call me, but that's okay.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I'm sure everybody's just giving you raving reviews. Well, I'm really excited to have you on today. You're one of the first people that I had the opportunity to meet with when I started traveling to conventions all over the place. I'm sure you remember because I
remember. Yeah, that was a big day.
I remind you all the time, but
it's one of my favorites.
I know. I met Derek probably 6 years ago at SAF, and it was happening in Maui, Hawaii. And I knew absolutely no one in the industry 6 years ago. And I was trying to find somewhere to sit at the gala at the very last night. And I thought he had an open seat next to him and you looked super friendly. So I was like, can I sit with you? And then you told me that you were doing the design competition. And I was like, well, you're going to win. And then you ended up winning. So I was very excited to share in that moment with you. And it's a pretty big deal.
Oh yeah, it's one of my biggest wins, and it was so fun because I had some friends there with me too. So everybody just kind of like lost their minds, and you were like, "I knew it!" It was so fun. I'll never have that memory. It's such a good one.
It is. It was a really fun moment to share in, and I've learned so much about competitions, the whole floral world, and it seems everywhere I go nowadays, you're there. Anywhere I travel to, my good friend Derek is there. So I'm just delighted to have you on and share with our audience just a little bit about you, your background, what you're doing now and with Syndicate, and just the awesome things that you have going on with your own business as well. So welcome, Derek. Yay. I'm so excited to have you. For anybody that hasn't met you before, would you mind giving like the short little story of who you are? And
absolutely. So I'm Derek Woodruff. I'm from Traverse City, Michigan. If you don't know where that is, I always pull out my Michigan map, and Traverse City's up here. And I started in the industry when I was a teenager. I went to vocational school, and I started at a flower shop when I was 16. So not like a family thing. It was completely by accident. And I've been in the industry ever since. I started my business when I was 24 in 2008. Floral Underground is what that's called. And I've been everything. I've been a retailer. I've been just a studio florist. I've been a wedding and event florist, and kind of everything in between. I've managed retail for other shops. And now currently I travel as mostly an educator, but I love workshops. It's one of my favorite parts of the business. I love workshops with consumers, workshops with other retailers and farmers. I just love connecting with people. I think that's what I've discovered that I really love. So all kinds of people from all different parts in and out of the industry. People are so fascinated that I am in the floral industry, and that's fun for me. I always wanted to be an actor, but
Well, you have a really good stage presence. I always feel like I'm very well entertained whenever I get up or listen to you get up and speak in front of a crowd, and you're very interactive and very go with the flow. And it's like, even today, I think you were going to do like an arch, but there was some mishaps. So now we're just going to get to see you do some designs, but I feel like the way that you teach is so easy for people to understand, and you just make it so pleasant. So I'm excited about that.
I like it to be fun, and I like the process to be kind of organic and smooth. I feel like everybody in the industry is so structured, and we all get stuck in our routine of what we just know how to do. And a lot of us don't play, and a lot of us don't try new things. So I try to integrate that into my everyday practice. Like, what is my style this year for the next few years? And what was my style, and how has it evolved? And it definitely has. So that's kind of a fun part of my floral personality, I guess you could say.
Yeah, you're from Michigan. I'm from Michigan too. So we have that in common as well. I love when I went to the Michigan, the Great Lakes Floral and Event Expo, they have incorporated their students all the way from high school. So I feel like that's where you got your start, and you were part of that association for a while.
Totally is. It used to just be called the Michigan Floral Association. Now it's called Great Lakes because we have Indiana and Ohio as part of our region. So we've kind of expanded it and are growing, which is really cool. But my school, my vocational school, our curriculum was the Michigan Certified Florist Program, which is that CF, that's after my name.
Okay.
And it used to be MCF, Michigan Certified Florist, but they dropped the M because now it's a nationally recognized certification program. And there's, I think, 7 state associations that have adopted it, but anybody in the country can take it as a certified florist program, which is kind of cool. So my teachers took me there my first year to the convention. I got to see all the design shows. They made me do the competition. That's how I got into competition. Very first thing.
Yeah.
Competition. And I won that one. So of course, I was like, oh my God, I'm good at this, right?
They're like, we got to get him involved in this. We're going to keep him, not let him go off to Hollywood or
it's like stuck. People like pull me on stage like every year and like made me speak. And, you know, I was in people's booths, or I like to dress up and go to the dinners. So yeah, the Floral Association in Michigan, it's strong and it's cool. It's a good community. It's a good family. It
is really inspiring. And it's, I think a lot of states listening.
I took a screenshot.
Did you see my face? Hi, Michelle. That's the power of Zoom, right? But when I went to Michigan, I was just so excited to see so many young students that they were trying to involve. And I think that kind of follows along with our whole next gen mission that has been recently happening. And I think they can look to a lot of Michigan's efforts as far as like keeping floral front and center, and as a huge opportunity for younger people that are getting into the industry, just looking to see where they might want to see their career go.
Yeah, as far as agri-science goes, like when you're going to vocational school, it's often just kind of floral artistry is like low on the totem pole, but in Michigan, I feel like they do make it a priority that people actually learn it, and the curriculum is really good. So
yeah, that's awesome. So what inspired you to open your Floral Underground? I think you started that back in 2008, which is almost like 14 years ago. So you look like a baby yourself. So what age were you when you started your company?
I was 24, and it was funny because I didn't do my first wedding until I moved to Traverse City. I grew up in Jackson, Michigan. So I moved to Traverse City when I was 20. And that summer I was working at this flower shop, and they said, you're going to meet with a bride. And I was like, oh God, no, like, I'm not ready for that. And they made me sit down and talk to this bride. And I had these great ideas based on what our conversation was. And so I did my first wedding, and like from there it kind of ballooned. Then I was like the wedding manager and designer. And then I went to another shop. And I think I did like 65 weddings in one summer. And I was just so totally burnt out. I'm sure everybody on this meeting can relate to that. But I thought to myself, I was like, you know, I could do this myself. Like, I don't need to work this hard for somebody else. Like, I think I'm ready. So that's what I did. And I called it Floral Underground because I was like, well, I feel unethical starting a floral business when I'm working for a floral business. So that was kind of the nickname. And then eventually I ended up quitting that job. I worked at a coffee shop as a barista as I started my business. So I started just real small, and it grew from there.
Yeah, well, I think it's really cool. You've kind of initiated, or I think you're one of the early adopters of doing the floral subscriptions too.
Yeah, that was just a matter of like, I wanted to try something different. I was actually working again for a friend in her store, just part-time. Like she wanted to bring fresh flowers as part of her plant boutique. So that was kind of my job. And so I wanted to do something different with my business that didn't conflict with hers. So I was like, oh, subscription boxes are huge. Like, what if I do that? And I wanted to make sure I did it different from everybody else's. So I ordered all the subscription boxes that were available with flowers. And I was like, okay, taking all these notes. I was like, flowers need to arrive hydrated, not dry packed. I was like, they need a vase, they need a tool, they need education. So it's a DIY project, not just a bouquet, because what's different between that and like going to a grocery store and buying a bouquet? There's not a difference unless there's some kind of educational component, which comes back to why I love the education part of it, the workshop part of it. So I kind of made that part of my subscription, and it's been very successful. I'm very happy with it. Actually, I was just doing the math. I've shipped over 1,000 boxes since I started, which is so many, like so crazy many for like one person.
Do you have anybody else on your team, or are you like a one-man show?
It's pretty much just me. I do have some interns come in from time to time, different young people that, want to shadow or want to do a wedding here or there, or just want to be mentored and learn some floral design. And I always really enjoy that. And the fun thing about like my day to day is that nothing is typical. It's like, oh, today we're going to do this restaurant and hotel. And then tomorrow I'm going to take you to a garden. We're going to cut all the flowers for this house. So we're going to make arrangements in this house. So it's like nothing is totally normal,
Yeah.
And that's
yeah, very unique, and I think that's what I always enjoyed most about being like an event florist, is I never knew what event was around the corner or what that I was going to have to plan or get involved.
And even so many of them are so similar, but then you get like a wild curveball every now and then, and that's what keeps it interesting.
Yeah. Or you just need to know how and when to say no, right?
Oh yes, that's the number one thing I can tell florists is like the word we don't know is no.
Right. Yeah. And it's hard to say no sometimes when you need that paycheck. So at the same time, I think we're open to like doing just about anything. What advice would you give to other florists that might be interested in starting like a subscription-based program?
So what I liked to do was like just try things and see what sticks. I tried a few different models. Like I tried small boxes and small bouquets and small vases, like trying to hit a really cheap price point. I tried like plants and did like workshop kits. And so I think the best thing to do is just try things and see what sticks. I shipped boxes to friends and other places just to see how things shipped and how I could improve my packaging and, what was feasible when it came to materials. The budget's a really big deal, so pay attention to that. Like, I know people don't want to spend a ton of money on a regular basis, so it was really important to keep the price point low, but it's more important to keep the margin where it needs to be. And so it actually kind of pushed me to be a more creative designer with limited materials, whether that be like color combinations or using unique materials, combining local stuff with imported things. So yeah, try stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was really cool. This year I had the opportunity to see you speak at Team Flower in Albany. And it was really nice because I think you were going through, and I think you have one of the pieces right now that you used in that display, but showing how you can price your arrangements for more profitability, or how if you make things look bigger, that you can get a larger price point. And I think it comes down to that like technique, or just making sure that they're using like all the elements of design to best make the most of the products that you have. And I think that was a real eye opener for a lot of the people in the audience, just how you can make simple design changes the value of something, the perceived value, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we often, like, again, we go back to our box where we're following recipes that we sell online, and everything that I have online is not like that. Like, you get an idea of what you're getting, but like you're buying the brand more than anything. So it's kind of a surprise, and people love it. And like, I think I've ever had anybody disappointed ever, because they're getting the scale that they want, they're getting the style that they want, and they have kind of a representation of it from a photo. But it's allows me to be creative too. So.
Yeah. And you said that what you basically do is, if I remember correctly, and this was back in April, so forgive me if I get anything wrong, you can correct me, but you basically go to the market and buy flowers for that week, and have your different price points that you'll have available, and people can go on and it's kind of like just a surprise on different price points.
Yeah, essentially I give them, I like to call it a petal palette, and that's something like Syndicate coined when shooting their catalogs with like the different floral palettes. They call it a petal palette. So I kind of integrated that to my website. So I'll shop from my wholesalers or from the farms, and then I'll just post a big bougie pull of what I have that week. So people see the materials, they're like, oh, this is what color I'm going to get if I order this week. And they'll say, oh, do I want a wrap? Do I want a medium arrangement, or do I want a big bougie arrangement? And then they get some variation of what that product is.
Yeah.
And it works.
That keeps it fresh though. And I love that that concept, because you're also helping out your suppliers too with maybe what they might need to move that particular week. So I feel like that's a win-win. And if you can be profitable on that, then.
Yeah. And it is challenging, I know, for shops or studio florists who have like standing orders, because they're getting all the same stuff. And I always tell them just to try and shop sometimes to add to what their standings are. I literally have no standing orders because I think it's too formatted. I don't like that. I like to shop. I know I'm paying a little bit more money, but I just I charge for it. And that's it. So
yeah, well, I love that. And I also love that you work so well with other companies. Like people invite you in to help represent their brand. I think that you've been to more than a dozen events this year repping for other companies. And what a great career for someone that is really looking to do this or just wanting to travel more to see parts of the country.
Can you remind myself constantly, like the idea of like, oh, this is what I wanted when I started doing this. It's like I wanted to speak, like be an educator. I wanted to do workshops. I wanted to travel and see like different parts of the country or the world. Like I wanted to represent somehow something.
Yeah.
And I got there. So if I'm ever like really tired, I have to remind myself like, this is what you wanted, remember?
Yeah, it's always time to rest later, right? Yeah, I know that we were wanting to touch on this, but this is a book that you and Helen Miller worked on this year. And I'm really very, very excited and proud of it. It's basically a sympathy arrangement that is using all of Syndicate's products, but also you guys have included the recipes for what it took to create some of these designs. So if anybody listening hasn't picked up this book, we'll have Derek's contact information, or maybe we should put Jessica's on here from Syndicate on here so they're not bombarding you asking about this book. But these products are all soon, we're going to have them represented in the Syndicate recipe collections to make it even easier for Details users. But wow, can you talk about this book and like the process? Because we have made it an effort to add like 10 recipes of Syndicates. And honestly, the amount of different kind of products and the different designs is like a tedious task to put together. So it's a slow process for us making sure we get it right before we launch it to everybody. But how many designs are in this book and how many days did they give you to design all of these pieces? Because it is not a little book here. This is like a book, and it's all waterproof, if I may, so it won't get messed up in your designs.
Yeah, we always like to dunk it in a bucket of water at a show. It's always fun.
I know, it's like the prop. They show ducking this book in the water.
People always come up. They're like, "Do you realize that one of your books fell into some water?" And we're like, "Yeah, it's great, isn't it?" Yeah. I don't know if I could even tell you like how many designs are in that book, and it was such a planning process, like to set that up. You know, the color stories were most important. I think we started with these different color palettes. And so identifying like traditional color palettes that are really important, like red, white, and blue patriotic is really important, and all white is important. You know, a feminine pink lavender, something like that's important. But then we also wanted to bring something modern to the table as well. And that's why there's like browns and neutrals as a color palette in there, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, there she is. Red, white,
red, white, and blue. You know, everybody needs that. But
and I know like any traditional florist, like they'll tell you that they sell the most of, you know, all white or red, white, and blue. So those were really important to have in there. And then just figuring out what the pieces were per palette. I was like, well, everyone needs a casket spray. We need a standing spray of some kind of form. We need something for an urn or prop of some kind, whether that's a candle, a Bible, a photo frame. And then you had to make all of it and photograph it as a set. We even had to buy a casket. So the casket.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Hilarious. We bought it on Amazon. Did you know you could buy a casket on Amazon? Oh, yeah.
We've been talking about our Halloween party, and we're thinking like, how is a way that we can incorporate the sympathy into like details? Because, you know, usually events are fun, but, you know, you need these kind of prompts when you're selling these events. So we thought, well, maybe if we made it more of like a Halloween, we can like mix that into our marketing and it wouldn't be so bad. But it's nice to know that you can get a casket on Amazon.
It was, I mean, effective too. And then the designs, you know, like there hasn't been a real sympathy book produced in a while. I think Team Floral or Team Flower, not Team Flower, who am I thinking of? Flower Click, excuse me. Flower.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Flower Click just came out with one right before we did. And we were like, oh, that's so funny. At the same time, we're both thinking there's not a new sympathy book. And then we both made one. And theirs is really great too. But we wanted to bring to the table something that was like styled, like something real. I feel like so many photos that you see on cookie cutter websites, like everything is photoshopped so much, or everything is placed so perfectly that it's just like not achievable for a florist. And that's why you see all these pictures online where it's like what I ordered and what I expected and what I got, two totally different things. So we wanted to not do anything like that in this sympathy book, and we wanted to make sure all the designs were imperfect or had a bloom that wasn't facing the camera or whatever. And that was the goal. And we did it. And I think people they really noticed that, and they really liked that.
Well, the photography is just wonderful. So I feel like it's really going to elevate that kind of sales experience, for the florist who is meeting with like these grieving families. And it's so crazy to me. I feel like, yes, you're a good communicator. And yes, you've sold weddings, but to be a good florist, you have to be able to like be put in these like awkward, emotional situations. So you're also like a therapist. So I think I would love to see that kind of book come from you eventually.
And it's so funny, like, because I deal with people not in the sympathy realm so much, when I do, like, I'm such a friendly person. So I'm like, hi, how are you? How's it going? And it's like, that is not something you ask a grieving family. You know what I mean? So it's like, you gotta tone it down, right?
Well, I think there's a place for it. And I know that the floral industry, everyone, if sympathy is a part of your business objectives, like there's a great need for that too.
And it's a big margin market, true. It's a big part of a business. So if you want to be successful, you should have it part of your business.
Yeah, and well organized. So kudos to Syndicate for providing this like awesome resource. And again, if anybody is looking to get that book, we'll be sure to include that in like the wrap up meeting. But so I want to jump into like competitions, because I have a list of everything that you've done here, and I would love if you could give people just like your best insight to be like a good competitor, how you prep for these things, and like some of the different, I know you've been on a TV show too. I think years ago, before there were the ones on HBO or whatnot, you were in like the very first installation of this TV show. So can you kind of talk about that and like your approach to entering competitions?
Yeah, so I started again when I was a teenager. I entered my first competition at 16. I was a junior in high school, and my teachers kind of made me do it. And what I've learned about myself over the years is that like my talent pool is very like wide and shallow. Like I can do most things like pretty well, right? But I don't have like one particular skill set that I'm very talented at. So usually if it comes to something creative, I'm pretty good at it, whether that be theater or dance or floral design, or, there's lots of different creative things out there. But so I entered this competition, I won. So of course I'm like, I'm the master, right? So then I elevate from the student design competition to the professional division, which I competed in for 7 years and didn't win anything.
Oh, really?
Because what I didn't realize is that they're looking at things bigger than creativity at this point. They're looking at the principles and elements of floral design, and they're looking at things like mechanics. So I remember I turned around when I actually pulled a judge aside, and I was like, hey, it was Jerome Raska, Jerome.
I do.
Look at these pieces and tell me why I didn't win. He's like, yeah. And so he walks over and he like picks up my bridal bouquet and he turns it over. And he's like, look at all this glue you got showing back here. I was like, really? They turn it around and look at that? He's like, yes. And he's like, you have a sharp piece of wire sticking out here. I was like, seriously? Like, it was all these things that I didn't consider. And when I started looking at it through the lens of an evaluator, then I started winning again. So cut to 7 years later in the professional division, I finally started winning because I was paying attention to the details. So
I love it.
very important. And what I also felt about competitions is that it made me a stronger designer, because those things that I started paying attention to when it came to competitions, I started noticing in my everyday work. I was like, oh, well, I have glue showing here, or this flower is facing a weird direction, or like I have a hole in this arrangement, or my line's not that strong in this design. It was all those things that started to make me a more competent designer and a little bit more flexible. When I started competing in the Sylvia Cup, which was the one that I won with you sitting next to me, that was my third go around with it. I won second twice, that's also a big honor. I always refer to second as the biggest loser, because I feel like
those Abby Lee,
But I mean, really, like I obviously had a strong presence in that competition, and it was that is a surprise package competition, which is actually my favorite kind of competition. I feel like everybody's on the same playing field. You show up, you have the same amount of time, you have the same themes, you have the same products. And it's like, that's when you really find out like who's really good at their craft and who can hone it in, right? So
I ask is too, because there's different components of what they ask to do.
For sure. So. And surprise elements. So I like surprises. I think it keeps things interesting. And that's turned me into this go with the flow designer. And when the TV show happened, that was called The Arrangement. And that was in 2010. 2010.
Okay.
Yeah,
A little
2010.
ahead of its time, a little
Yeah,
ahead of
so it was on the Logo Network. So if anybody here knows RuPaul's Drag Race, it's the same production company. And that
Oh
shows,
my goodness.
yeah. And the format was exactly the same as RuPaul's Drag Race with flowers. So it's kind of funny to look back at that and be like, oh my God, this is totally RuPaul's Drag Race with these floral designers. And somebody recommended me for that, and I got cast, and that was a competition. It was definitely a live competition, that's for sure. And we filmed that in 3 weeks for a whole season of 8 episodes. And it made me a stronger designer. I came out of that knowing more than I knew before I went in. And I just love competition. I think it's good for everybody, whether you're good at it or not. I think you'll learn something. I think it's good practice. You know, when I competed in the America's Cup in 2018, like my goal was to make it to the World Cup. And that was like pipe dream. And I was the runner up. And that was so like kind of heart wrenching at the same time as like, whew, right?
Oh yeah, well, you never know, right? If it's like,
yeah,
pressure's not on me, but
right.
what if,
and then to that point, like I literally competed in any competition I could find. Like I went to Houston and competed in Texas State. I competed in Chicago for Best of Blooms. I competed in Great Lakes Floral Expo, Sylvia Cup. I literally did any competition I could to prepare just for that one competition. And everybody was asking me this year, they're like, why aren't you doing Sylvia Cup? I said, because I'm out of practice. I have not designed in a competition since 2019. So
and well, I think it has something to say too about like the community though, because if all these people are competing, you know, that is such a strong family unit too, because you see them all over the place. And also I feel like that it opens you up to be like a really sought after freelancer for someone that you meet and they're like, hey, would you mind come helping me you know, construct this event? So have you had any cool opportunities that have come along?
Oh yeah, and they can see that like while they're watching you compete, right? Like you're exposed at that point. They can see how well you manage time. They can see how well you budget and manage materials. They can see how you work under pressure and what kind of stress you can deal with. And you know, all of those things, you know, as you know, are assets when it comes to setting up a live event. So
yeah, that's awesome. I feel like I get nervous for all the competitors, and then you always see people whispering and pointing, you know, and it's so it's like, oh, are they saying something good, or are they saying they like hate my work?
Like, oh, look at that train wreck, you know, who knows?
I know. Well, and it's always interesting when you go around and watch these competitors. Like some people compete with their back facing like all the people because they don't really want to show their work, and some people are just like out there like, hey, it is what it is. But I always
put things on, like if I have to make something as a piece to wear, like I'll put it on. I'll put something on my head. People always just think it's so funny. I was like, what? I have to make sure it stays on. It's balanced, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think it's also for like how you approach life too. You know, if you can get out there and compete and do anything, like you really open yourself up for any opportunity, whether good or bad, but you always will like learn something from your wins or from your failures or dumpster fires, right?
You learn more from your failures than you do from your wins, which is why like I'm never afraid to fail. Definitely not afraid to fail. I definitely learned something from it. So failure's not a bad.
Yeah. So you also, I feel like that, I think really brought you up as like an educator when it really put your name out there as far as like, you know, all of everybody in the Society of American Florists now knows who Derek Woodruff is. And do you feel like those opened you up for more educational opportunities just competing in that realm?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, you're right. Because the very first time I competed in the Sylvia Cup, I had never been to SAF before. And that was in 2014. It was Marco Island. And I showed up there and I felt like a celebrity because like my badge said like who I was and that I was a Sylvia Cup competitor. And everybody was just like, ooh, you know what I mean? I was like, what? And I remember people coming up to me saying like, apparently you're the one to beat. I was like, oh, am I? You know what I mean? So I think you're right. Like it definitely propelled me into their eyes. Like, oh, who's this person who's like doing, and I got second. So I did really well. Even though I was like so disappointed, but
yeah, well, you know, it always sucks to lose, right? But it's a great thing. And I feel like our floral community, if anybody hasn't been to any of these events and experienced them firsthand, I think the industry is just so welcoming and you really create lifelong bonds with people. And I have to say that some of my best friends are people that I've met over these last 6 years at these different conventions, and just seeing them. It's always nice to travel somewhere and see a familiar face. So, you and I were high-fiving each other like a dozen times. Like,
and that might be it. Like, we're passing each other at the trade show and it's like, hey, and that might be the only time we can see each other because we're working the whole time.
It's so true. So you and I have both been to like quite a few events this year, and I feel very lucky that we were able to do that. Do you have a favorite this year of anything that stands out in your mind as like a top event?
I really wanted to love Next Gen, but I didn't really get to experience any of it because like I hosted the CHOP tournament that happened when we were there, and then I had to present, and I also designed Syndicate's table, and I designed some pieces for Jessica and Renato's program, plus I had my program. So I don't feel like I got to experience it at all, but that format of event is like really fun for me. Something short, sweet, crammed full of education, lots of networking and fun. Like the fun is huge. And like when you go to these places, it's like, who's in the pool? Who's at the bar? Like, who are these people that we're partying with? It's so fun.
Yeah.
So I like any that have that. I feel like SAF really has a lot of that, which is cool.
Yeah, the Next Gen was really, really quite a tremendous event. And I was able to bring most everybody on my team there, and very educational too, because I think a lot of people don't really understand the monstrosity of our industry. If they're working just in their flower shop, they don't really see the outside world. But when my team was exposed to just like the airports or the logistics and like the warehouse where all this is stored, and then seeing the trucking lines, and they had some good programming too, I have to say, to teach, but kind of opens your eyes to all the opportunity and all the necessary careers involved with the industry.
Definitely not just designers, that's for sure. And I can tell you from experience that most florists, don't know where their product comes from, which is, it's kind of a big deal, especially when there are interruptions in the supply chain, as we've experienced the last few years. It's like you kind of need to know where your product's from. And most people don't know that like 80% of our product is imported. And like those are like huge, that's a huge deal. And when there's disruption somewhere with with blockades, or when there's a hurricane, like how disruptive that is and to what specific product that might affect, it's kind of important to know that. So I think that it was a cool conference because you got to learn some of that. You got to see it.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And it's there's something to learn every day in this industry.
Oh yeah, for sure.
What do you enjoy teaching most?
I love plants and flowers, and I feel like consumers are my favorite audience to teach because I feel like there's the greatest level of success. And I always like to compare it to food. So if you think about like what a Blue Apron box is, and they send you these ingredients to make you prepare this beautiful meal. And when you do it successfully because you follow the instructions, it's so rewarding. You're like, I made this beautiful dish and I'm not a chef. So like just taking the idea of that and putting it on the veil of flowers, like working with somebody who's like, I've never done this before. And then by the time we're done, they're like, oh my gosh, I made this beautiful arrangement, and the success that they feel from that is what really warms my heart. I love that.
Yeah, I have to say that I enjoy that too, especially when I visit like a girlfriend. I went to the Society of American Florists Congressional Action Days, and I typically will spend a few days with my good friend Julie, who lives in Washington, D.C. And she has the most gorgeous blooms all, outside in DC, you have like the most exquisite flowers. And so we went foraging, and she describes the blooms. I said, no, you need greenery too, And so she had just no idea about how to do things, or what to chop, or what to, put together in this vase. And so we spent a little time, and now she like sends me pictures all the time of like, she went to the grocery store, bought like some tulips, but she also went out and foraged all this like greenery in her yard. And like, it makes my heart like so happy, because I'm like, she feels successful. And, of course she should be patronizing her florist there in the city. But if you are sent some lovely bouquets, it's always nice to know what to do with them. So yeah. So is there anything that you would suggest to florists to advance like their career or where their business is, that are easy, actionable tools that they can take away?
Yeah, I always tell people like when they're looking for something more, like an easy way to get involved is like a state association level, so depending on what state you're in or what region you're in, there's always some kind of organized association that you can become a part of for education. There's usually always a conference. If there's a competition, I always encourage people to do competition because it just makes you a stronger designer. And then if somebody wants to become an educator, for example, it's like they just need to tell people. Like I remember telling people when I was younger, like someday I want to do that. I want to be on stage and I want to share and I want to teach. And then an opportunity will come up. And that's from forging these relationships and communicating what you're looking for. But then as far as design goes, there's lots of online resources, which is really great. But I always tell people just to practice and to try new things. I think that's where I've had the most success is when I look at something and I admire it. And I was like, man, I wish I really knew how to do something like that. Is to practice it. I remember the first time I made an arrangement that's now kind of my brand staple. It took me like 2 or 3 hours just to like figure out like, how does this thing go together? How many stems do I need? Like, how big should this be? What's the shape? What does it look like from the back? And I just stared at this arrangement for hours until it was like photo worthy. And then I was like, oh, this is amazing. But it took that practice and it took that time and those resources. And I think that a lot of us get so caught up in this as our career. It's like, I don't want to spend my extra time playing with flowers, but if you want to change or you want to better yourself, you kind of have to.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And I can agree on the state associations or just finding something that's local, even like a garden club.
Yeah,
local,
sure.
I think in your own city, I think that there's so much to learn just as far as like what grows in your area. I think just having that knowledge too brings an asset to any kind of job.
And I always like to brag about Michigan in particular. I feel like we have one of the strongest state associations out there, along with Texas and with Florida. Florida has a great one as well. But we're a big region, all the surrounding states have small associations, but it's like, if you want to like really get some dynamic education, hands-on workshops, have a really good time, it's like, just come to Grand Rapids. It's a good time.
You should. There's a lot of, and the Wisconsin one too. It has a attached.
Yeah.
Who knew? But that's awesome. So you have some tools that you use in your everyday process that you think everybody should have as part of a staple in their design, like their florist toolbox.
Yeah, so I've got blooms here, I've got some containers, and I have some of these tools here. So if you don't care, I'd love to demonstrate them as we talk about it.
I think so, yeah. And if anybody has any questions for Derek as we're moving along, please feel free to shout them out. I think this is the perfect time.
I love questions, absolutely.
Yeah, so get them ready if you guys have anything. But so what you got, Derek? I love how you arrange the flowers there.
They like frame me.
Yeah, it's really quite clever.
So this particular piece, this is a ceramic footed bowl, and this is one of my most popular pieces on my website that I sell arrangements in. So I use it with this, and this is a pillow for those of you who don't know. I'm sure a lot of you may have seen this, and it's part of Details software.
It is one of the items that we have.
So this is a 6-inch pillow. What is cool about this is that it's made from recycled plastic, it's reusable, and it's recyclable. So what I tried to do in the last few years is get away from using too much flower foam. And something like this, I can tell consumers to reuse or they can recycle it. Sometimes they return it. I use these for a lot of hotel accounts too, which I always get back and swap out. So I'll use the same cage at a hotel over and over and over again. So really the cost of this compared to like a piece of foam, it's minuscule and you get the use out of it, which is really neat. So I designed this on top of this container. I don't tape it in or anything. I have often told people in the past that they should tape it in for delivery, but since I'm a one-man show and I'm usually making my own deliveries, like I know how to drive with flowers in the car. So that's kind of important, right?
Yeah, well, and I also think the consumer can also learn how to take it out and cut it and trim and make fresh.
And that's just it. So, and I'll tell people when I walk it up to the door, because this is a small reservoir of water, like I'll pick up the arrangement and I'll say, you can just take this off, put this under the sink and refill it and then put it back on. And they're like, oh, that's so easy. So they really like that part.
Yeah. And I think that's about part of the process of being a good, having a good business is teaching your customers how to get the longevity out of their flowers. They'll be happier and returning more often. That's what
they really want, right? They want their flowers to last, especially when they're spending a lot of money on it. And my arrangements aren't cheap. Like I'm pretty candid about that there.
Yeah. So tell me, about that. Like, as you're working, what size, what is the price point that you're planning to put on this arrangement? Do you already know?
Yeah, so this is my medium size, which is $150. I literally only have 3 options on my website for sending flowers, other than the DIY stuff. So not that many options, really. And it's just because people have trouble making decisions. So I feel like the easier the process for buying the flowers can be, the more success they'll have in purchasing them, and the more likely they are to be a return customer. And I also tell people what is appropriate for what they're buying. So I often like to put it like it's an occasion. So my more inexpensive wrap, I tell people that it's appropriate for like a gesture for a neighbor, or like if somebody's dog died, or it's maybe it's a coworker's birthday or something like that. That it's appropriate for that. This particular size, it's a little bit more expensive. So maybe this is for a family member's birthday, or this is appropriate for a business opening, something like that. And I think people really appreciate that option because I'm telling them what it's for, right?
Right. And what's expected. It's like going on a cruise ship, if the suggested tips for your maitre d', it's like, okay.
Yeah, I want to know that. Don't you want to know that? I mean, I feel like
it's appropriate. Yeah, we all need rules. So you have 3 price points on your website. Would you mind sharing with everybody what those are?
Yeah, so the smallest one, it's a spiral hand-tied wrap. It's called A Thought, and it's $75. The medium one is this one right here. It's in the ceramic piece. This one is a gesture, and it's $150. My largest piece is in another ceramic bowl. It's a bit larger and lower, but it makes that big bougie bohemian style that we love. And that one's called a statement, and that one's $250.
Okay. Yeah. So kind of like a very nice, depending on what they want to spend. And do you add delivery on top of that?
So I actually don't charge delivery. It's built into the price of the arrangement. Based on my geographic area, and because I'm the delivery person, it's really easy for me to work that out. If I were a retailer, I might reconsider that based on what my staffing is and how many vehicles I have. But since it's just me, I kind of work it into the price.
So what do you do when you're traveling, or do you say we're not taking any deliveries during this time? Or
that's a great question. And I love that you know the questions to ask too, by the
way. well, no one else is giving us any, so I'm going to fill in the gaps.
And you're right, because I am a one-man show. It's like, what happens to your deliveries when you're not there? Well, the way my website works, I actually have an order delivery calendar. So when I know I'm going to be gone, I'll go in and I'll black out dates. And that's kind of what keeps me on track.
Yeah, and that makes sense. If someone knows, they better prepare. So, and I feel like that's what you've done from a marketing standpoint, to educate your clients on your process, right? If we're wanting to have like a boutique artistic studio, it might not be like an everyday walk-in scenario.
Exactly. And if I really want to experience retail, because I like to dabble in retail every now and then, but because of my schedule, it doesn't really support it all the time. Like I can do pop-up shops, and I've had a lot of success with those as well. And that's a lot of fun for me, pop-up retail, because it's kind of like you can set the rules, right? You can choose what you're selling. You can be open when you want to. You can add a workshop to it. There's lots of different variables that kind of go into that scenario, and it keeps it interesting. And I think that's what I don't like about retail in general, is because it's so repetitive and so consistent, but pop-up retail is a different animal.
When you pop up, do you do those in like a coffee shop, or like or is it in a particular space, the same
so
time?
Sometimes I'll do it just right in my studio. I've also partnered with different farms or breweries, coffee shops also, yes. I actually find that I have more success when I do pop-up retail with other companies that do pop-up retail. So if you've ever heard of like paparazzi jewelry, for example, a friend of mine sells that. It's kind of like costume jewelry. They're like $5 pieces, but she'll have her store and I'll have mine at the same time. And then we kind of get each other's audiences in one space together. So I've had a lot of success with that as well.
Yeah, it's nice to collaborate. So do you do a lot of videos? I mean, I know I've seen some of your great videos that you've done where you're just like, here's the flowers, and then you're like, boop, and then it makes an arrangement. Have you had a lot of success with those, or tell me your process?
In particular, I film all of the subscription boxes that I do, and that's because it's part of the experience. So that's kind of like the idea of putting this recipe together. So I like to say that I have like recipe videos, and that kind of explains what it is. So not only that, but it pairs it with a base and it tells you how to put it together. So I have over 100 of those on YouTube, on my YouTube, if you can believe that, which is kind of insane now that I think about it and say it out loud.
I know, right? It's a lot. It is. It takes so much time. Do you spend a lot of time editing or
I kind of have mastered it, believe it or not.
you're
It's great, and I try to keep it simple. I feel like the simpler you can keep it, the better it is for everybody. So I use my system is not sophisticated by any means. I actually built an over the head like tripod out of PVC pipes that sits on my table, and it's got a selfie stick phone clamp zip tied. So I have one phone above me, and then I have one phone facing me. And so when I'm editing video, I'm just cutting back and forth between the videos. And I don't really do much with sound. I just use music, and I'll use text on screen, and I try to keep it organized. So all the text pops up when you're seeing the flat lay shot. So it keeps it kind of organized that way and communicates the information. And then that way I can just replicate that. And that's kind of what's made me fast, is I can do that. You know, I used to do it every other week. Now it's just once a month. But I can do that whole thing in about 20 minutes. I think that's pretty good.
Well, I like that you were using our trusty zip tie friends in your methodology.
Oh yeah, they're a fan favorite of mine for sure. And I actually use them in bouquets, much to people's dispute. I like them. I think they're fast. Like, I don't care if somebody cuts their ribbon off and they see a zip tie, that doesn't matter to me.
I think we have a question from Kelly. I think her.
Yeah. Hi. It's not really a question. I met you, by the way, Derek, before you started your business now up at Frank Adams in Portland, Oregon.
Oh,
Frank
yeah. I love Frank Adams.
Yeah, I did one of the classes there, and I think there were too many people doing recipes in their head, and me, I'm just like, grab the flowers and let them talk to you. That's how I sort of work.
Yes, thank you.
I just can't do it the other way. I try, but I can't. Anyway, in the last 2 years, 8 months, I was in a wheelchair because of broken leg, ankle, blah, blah, blah. So I had to shut down my business, but I'm temporarily, but I'm trying to sort of reinvent myself and do something different. And you struck my attention at the pop-ups about how to go about doing that, because I work from home.
Okay.
I don't have flowers any time of day, and that really irks me sometimes because I can't always get down there to Frank's. But people will call for this or that, and I would prefer to have, say, I can only work Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, or Tuesday and Thursdays, or whatever I'm doing. I have an Airbnb, I have other jobs, but I'm trying to figure out a day that I can say, look, I'm going to have these products, these flowers, and you can buy them on this day, and blah, blah, blah. And so the pop-up was sort of interesting because how one would go about that, but it would give me more control over my inventory and my sales and all of that. So do you have any more suggestions about that?
So there are the model that you're talking about, that it does exist, and that's a really great way to do it. And by building your brand, so like specifically on Instagram, people shop Instagram because of the visuals, or any social media for that matter. But once you build a brand, people will follow. And so when you say you're going to offer something, it makes it special because you're not retail. So when I talk about doing a pop-up shop, people get really excited because they don't normally get to buy from me without just ordering something from my website. So if they know they get to come shop in some instance, they get to pick from different arrangements or offerings that I might have, they get excited about it. The collaboration is big too. If you can find a place to collaborate with, you'll get their following and you'll have your own following that comes to it, especially at a place like a brewery or a coffee shop or a farm, somewhere where people can come and eat and hang out. Then it makes it an atmosphere too. So then you have this continued audience that's there willing to shop, come back, buy more. And that works pretty well too. But I've seen the same model done with things like pizza, pop-up pizza shops where you have to place your order. Like you get a limited menu. They're like, oh, we have these 5 pies to choose from, for example. And these are the dates that you can order them. And people clamor for that because it creates this need, it creates this urgency. And it's like, oh, I follow them. Their food looks really good. I want to try it. So I'm getting these 3 pies on this one day. And then you've got your orders in advance, which is really good.
So do you go there with just flowers in buckets and design as you go, or do you have them already made, or do you teach people?
That was my question.
People like to watch me design. So I like to have things made up for people who are in a hurry. But then I do like to stand there and create arrangements so that people can see the process and appreciate it a little bit more. Maybe I'm hitting a higher price point for somebody, or maybe as somebody has a request, they're like, oh, can you combine these ingredients? And I can make something special.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of places around here that are sort of that way. Stylistically, they're, like you said, they're breweries and such like that. Near me. So
especially where you are.
yeah, seriously. And we got some Hillsboro, Oregon, Portland. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. But even near me, I've got the whole Intel community, Nike and Yahoo, Netflix, all those guys. And so we get people all from all over the place. And they're going to sort of like these little farmer market stores that are, like you said, bougie, and they've got the expensive wines and the expensive meats in there, and they have music on the weekends and that sort of thing. And so
all about that immersive experience, and everybody likes that, right? If they're going to go hang out and spend some money, they want it to be exactly what they're looking for. They want the bougie. Everybody wants the bougie.
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad thing, you know. And do you suggest like pre-selling these things, or so you know that you're going to walk away with sales, or do you typically just go and just have a bunch of products?
You know, I haven't ever done pre-sales, but I know florists, even in my own area, who do pop-ups that will do that. They'll pre-sell things and have things ready to go. In my mind, it's not too big of an investment. And I typically know that if I can't move everything in my pop-up, I've got some other accounts where I can move products. So it's not something I'm typically worried about, but I think a pre-sale idea is a really smart way to move it.
Awesome. So he has made this arrangement in like 8 minutes. So you guys keeping track, you need to like make sure you get on his speed. But time is money, right?
Right. Yeah. So this is easily $150 arrangement from my website, and it's got a lot of ingredients in it. So it definitely adds up to that. You can tell that I have a particular color palette that I really like. I'm really into the terracottas, the blushes, the oranges, a little bit of pink, and I've kind of made that my brand color too. So my logo is a terracotta color now. It's not just orange like it used to be, but that's the evolution of the brand, right? Yeah, and even incorporated some dried flowers in here. I think that's really smart because you can have all of that stuff on hand, and then you can easily incorporate it into something if you need something a little bit more. It's there for you.
Can I ask you a favor, Derek? I would love for you to photograph that, maybe with your smiling face behind it, but maybe one without you too against that wall. And so that we can share that recipe with people that are watching so they know what you used. What ingredients did you get and where did you get them?
So funny story. I brought the carnations, the Hyperion berry, and some of this Israeli ruscus with me because it was just leftover stuff I had from the studio this week. And then the other flowers, I went to a local florist here in Kokomo and I just shopped their cooler, which was super fun for me because they had a lot of variety. And it's fall now, so a lot of those fall blooms are, I mean, I like this stuff all year round, but it just paired really well with the materials that I had. And then some dried flowers Syndicate had around here, so I just poached those.
You should mention that you're in the studio, the Syndicate Design Studio. Syndicate
I don't think we did mention that. I am. This is where we film a lot of the videos. We shoot some photos up here. So yeah, this is a studio that I'm very familiar with.
So it's not like just a fake backdrop, everybody. This is an actual real live space.
Oh yeah, even the light changes when I move out of the way. That's
I know. Like, look at that. The sunny sky. I'm here in Florida, this impending hurricane. Like our skies don't look all bright and sunny for once. That's cool. Well, bravo on that design, Derek. You have one more that you're gonna share with.
Yeah. So this isn't one of the vases that I use in my DIY collection. I only have 3 vases. It's the prism, the pebble stone, and the milk jug. But because I'm at Syndicate, I thought I should showcase something new. This is part of their, they do their fall and their holiday pre-book every year. I'm sure most retailers have seen it. It comes out like in a little booklet or an email online. But I get to help with that creative process with their creative team and their product development team. I get to help choose color palettes and help name them. So this is part of their desert spice assortment, which is part of their fall color palette for next year. there's like this, there's like a eucalyptus kind of bluish green color, and then there's this like soft kind of caramely yellow color. And the colors are super spot on, trend forward. They're just really great. So this is one of those. I particularly like this color, but then we use it with this tool that comes with all of my subscription kits. And Karine has seen this before.
Yes, I have. Actually, my husband used it in the chopped competition at the Next Gen, and I believe he won that competition.
He totally won that competition. He had the crowd just going. They loved him.
Yeah, Florida man. Come on now. And let me ask, did you have a help in naming that vase, Desert Spice?
You know what? Desert Spice was not one of the names I pitched, but I really like it. I think I came.
It smells like a cologne. It's like an Old Spice kind of.
Right, Desert Spice. Yeah. Totally. I think one of my names was like Terra Sunset Terra or Terra Sunset, something like that.
Oh no.
I don't know. It wasn't as good. No, it wasn't as good. That's okay. Not every name's a home run, right? So.
Yeah, right. Well, and I love that Syndicate has been like just kind of very forward and like their thoughts, and as far as like the different new products that they have that you've been showing, and you know, their whole new arch line, I feel, has just been pretty phenomenal as far as like where you can get these great pieces that are easy to assemble and construct.
Yeah, especially if you create on-site installations. It's basically like just thinking about it beyond an arch. It's an installation mechanic is what it is. It's like if you need a structure to put flowers on it and you don't know what to do, like that's what it's made for. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's it's been really neat. I know I keep seeing you everywhere we go, and you're like constructing these arches and then breaking them down. And it's a lot of work, you know. I don't think other people that are outside of our industry realize the amount of labor and so forth that our florists are doing. So
it's funny too, because everybody's just like, oh my gosh, like how do you do that so fast? I was like, well, I've literally put together like 30 of them at this point. So
you're like this. I know. I'm like, so Derek, I could use some help. And you're like, yeah, get in line. Oh, we have another question from Kelly.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, I'm just interested. I have not used that little square grid thing. What is that called? I know it's in Syndicate somewhere, but
yes, this is called the DIY Floral Grid. It's a horrible name. I didn't name it, so.
Yeah.
Okay, easy peasy. Well, I was thinking with that the pop-ups, I would really like to teach people how to make their own little things. So an idea that I'm
this
feeling.
is a floral tool for retailers, for beginners. I use it in workshops all the time. And it's a tool that I just let people use, but it generates sales because people always want to buy it. It's a great upsell tool. Like one thing of the success with it, they really love it. But like I said, I put it in my DIY kits as part of the experience, and people just really love the success that they have with something like this.
Well, I think that'd be really good with the pop-up, because I can have a class sort of thing with people. They can do it right there. They get the bunch of flowers that I've already selected together, and then they can make it themselves with the idea of me showing them how to do it. And so it doesn't eliminate me, because they can't do the big arrangements, but it certainly gives them a certain amount of feeling of control of their own arrangement.
And it really gives them an appreciation for what we do too. Like, cause we can whip out an arrangement and like Karine said, like 8 minutes, right? But when you're teaching a workshop, it takes upwards of 45 minutes to an hour. And then when they look at that and it's one arrangement and they saw the struggle that they had with it, they're like, whoa, I have a lot more respect for my florist now.
Yeah, in the chopped competition that my husband was so lucky to win, he has never designed in the entire time we've been married, which is 22 years, ever touched the flowers or arranged them. And I was very surprised at how well he did, but I have to give props to the grid, because I think it really helped keep him in line and made his flowers stay in place. So he's going to show you when he finishes that it's really like you can just undo it, and it's just like having taped the base, but without the tape, right?
Yeah, so that's always my thing. It's like tape is such a waste of time and such a waste of materials too, because it's just this single-use plastic, and you can't take your arrangement out to change the water if there's tape on the base. So it's really not setting the customer up for success. So I don't like tape. I don't like using tape unless I absolutely have to, but this kind of eliminates the need for the tape. So once you get to this point, essentially you've got your arrangement, what you want it to be, then you just kind of separate and remove the grid pieces like so, and the arrangement stays neatly in place.
It's really brilliant. I will have to give you everyone.
And I wish I could say I invented this, but I did not. But I did.
Know. Who's holding that patent? Come on now.
It is something I looked at and I was like, that has application in the floral industry, not just for consumers, but for so many people.
Yeah. And we actually, I think it's really neat when people do their holidays, you know, they set up, I think you said, like set up like 10 vases in a row with those grids on top and go at it. And then there you go. So it just makes for like a.
And I've even been to a florist that they do sell a lot of hand ties, and they'll set up all their big bases and make 10 at a time, remove the grid, pull it out, tie the arrangement, wrap it up and put it in the cooler. And it's like, you just made 10 hand tied arrangements at the same time. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, right. That's amazing. Well, I appreciate you sharing those tools with us, and we'll have links for those attached to this email as well. But Derek, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this last bit of time with us. I'm so happy to introduce you to our florists from far and wide that maybe be unfamiliar with you. But I will have to say though, we did a survey and we listed all these different floral designers and educators, and Derek was really highly ranked up there. I think you tied with Martha Stewart. So congratulations, Derek. You know, global world icon Martha Stewart is in tough competition with you here.
Man, can we tell her that? I would love to get on her level.
You know, we have to come up with a few more products that maybe we need to have sell at the local Kmart or something. I don't know.
Right, exactly, yes.
Yeah, she really knows how to do it, but we'd love to get her on for a business chat. But thank you so much. It's been I'm so honored that you've spent this time with us, and I can't wait to see what you are creating next, and any events coming up in the future that we can see you at.
You know, I will be at the IFPA show that's in Orlando. I'll be at the Denver Profit Blast for SAF in a couple of weeks. Yep, so that's coming up on the 11th. I will be at Wedding MBA, so if anybody's going to Wedding MBA, Karina and I will both be there.
Oh, we will. And we were kind of before the call. I think I might like to get you on a chops competition.
Oh, I'm here for it. I will definitely do that.
I know. I'm going to like test your competition skills and make you put your money where your mouth is, right?
Ace and I, you just say, here's the two reality TV boys. Let's put them head to head in my booth. I love it.
I know. I know Ace is going to be there. So I think that he might be a good contender, and maybe I can see if I can round up anybody else, but the wheels are turning.
Yeah, I like it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Derek. As always, we are going to make a recording of this and then share it with you guys. Please feel free to share with anybody that you think might love to see it. And thanks for sharing your designs with us, Derek. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Pleasure's all mine.